I used theatrics to spite my bullies. He was pretty dramatic about the whole thing. When I was a young man of just 18, I got a job in the Canadian oil patch. It was my first real job. This was the early 2000s, and it paid $20 an hour with no experience or education required, while minimum wage was under $6. The job was called well testing. Basically, you hook up a closed pressure tank and a flare stacked in new oil and gas wells, then flow them and gather data. It is hard work when setting up and tearing down, but the rest is just recording gauges and doing some computer work. Not bad for a first job, except for Gary. You work either 2-man 12-hour shifts or 4-man 24-hour crews, one laborer and one supervisor per shift. I was paired with a mean-spirited alcoholic in his mid-50s named Gary. He was overweight and lazy, only helping with things too heavy for me to lift on my own, like 250-pound pipes. He spent most of his time in the trailer watching DVDs, napping, and occasionally typing data into a computer. He also liked picking on me with jokes, which were really just insults. I am not a small guy, about 6'1", and he was noticeably smaller, but at that time I lacked confidence and had a baby face, so he targeted me. I got called stupid a lot. When he found out I had never used a power drill, he asked me, "Didn't your dad teach you anything?" I made the mistake of telling him my dad had only been in my life for a few years. The next time I messed something up, he said, "No wonder your dad walked out on you." I did call him out on that, but like every other person like him, he said I couldn't take a joke. We always worked far out in the country, and I often had to eat dinner with him in small-town restaurants, usually bars if possible. He drank a lot. He could actually be decent when he was a couple drinks in, but he never really stopped drinking. It quickly became routine that I drove us to work in his truck. He made money per kilometer driven, and we could drive anywhere from 100 to 350 kilometers a day, every day, for weeks. Meanwhile, I only got minimum wage for travel time. He was hungover most mornings, didn't want to drive, and told me he was the boss. He would sleep the entire ride while I drove. I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months of constant insults and disrespect. I tend to stay quiet and not react much, but everyone has a breaking point. I needed the job, so I kept putting up with it until I didn't. One night, while we were out of town on a job, I mentioned during dinner that it was unfair he slept while I drove his truck and still got paid for it. I suggested maybe he could share some of that money, so he did not like that. He completely lost it. More insults, more threats, and at one point he even threatened my job. I was young, and it actually got to me. That was my breaking point. The next morning, he was passed out in the passenger seat like usual, and I was driving us to work. About 30 kilometers from the site, I saw a semi-truck pulled over on the side of the highway. The engine was running, and the driver was outside. I got an idea. I stopped, got out, and asked the driver for a favor. He agreed. Gary was still completely asleep. I repositioned the truck so we were facing the semi, almost bumper to bumper. Then I gave the signal. The trucker turned on his headlights and blasted his air horn with full force. At the same time, I started honking our truck and screaming at the top of my lungs, yelling that we were going to die. The noise was overwhelming. Gary woke up in absolute panic. He shot straight up, completely disoriented and terrified. The whole thing lasted less than a minute. He was furious, yelling and trying to process what had just happened. I pulled away and waved to the truck driver as we left. A few seconds later, Gary started yelling that he had dangerously high blood pressure and that I could have caused a stroke. At the time, I didn't even fully understand what that meant. I just laughed and told him he should calm down. Then I said, "Can't you take a joke?" That made him even more angry. The rest of the drive was him yelling and me laughing. He was furious, and I just couldn't stop. When we finally got to the site, he told me to get out and said I was fired. Then he went to call the company owner. I waited there for a few hours until the owner came to pick me up. Gary had told his version of the story, making me sound terrible. But on the drive back, I explained everything that had been happening. The owner actually found it pretty funny. In the end, I got moved to a different crew, and that was that. I finally got away from him. TLDR, I tricked my work bully into thinking he was about to be in a crash with a semi-truck, and it completely backfired on him.